long. I know. Thanks, Kara. I know a couple of people had some other things happening this morning. They were going to come a little bit later. And Seiji is our remote maker today. He is somewhere in upstate New York and has a lovely background there. And I'm here in Providence, sunny day. So we'll be able to share with you about prototyping. But to get us started as an icebreaker, well, two things. First of all, we'd love it if you'd put in the chat where you're from and something that you'd like to get out of the seminar today. What made you sign up for coming today? Hey, Crystal from Missouri, welcome. Welcome. And after you've done that, I mentioned in the email that I sent out this morning that we wanted you to gather up some open-ended, simple things that you could use to do a little building with that you might find around your desk or around your house, wherever you are today. Because what we want to do is do a little prototyping. Hey, Mary in Minnesota. Prototyping is, we'll get into a little bit more detail on it, but it's quick. And as Seji says, you don't want to think about it too much and get out of your head and think outside the box. And so using some simple materials, our prompt for you for today is to build your dream house. So with whatever you have around, I've got paper and a glue stick and a couple things here that I dug out of my desk. And just, we're going to take 8 minutes and just build something that represents your dream house. And then we'll talk about, go ahead, Sage, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I'm just going to reinforce what you said. And like Anne was saying, don't get caught up in your head about it being perfect. The whole reason we keep the time frame so short is because we just want to dive in. So obviously in 5 to 8 minutes, you're not going to make something that is going to look like a perfect house, but with what you have in front of you, try to just do the best you can to get the general shapes and forms. So really don't overthink it. At the end of the 5 to 8 minutes, we just want to have something that gets us towards that goal of being able to make a model of our dream house. So just have fun with it.
All right, so have some fun and we'll check in with you and we'll come back together at about, we'll split the difference and say 2:18, not to be too technical.
All right.
All right, have some fun.
And I'm really stretching the very basic materials. The reason I'm outside is I just arrived up at my grandmother's house, who passed away a little while ago, and we're doing one of the last clean outs. So I had to scramble in the last 20 minutes and try to find whatever I could find laying around. So it's kind of fun to only be able to work with what you have, and that really is what is possible with the idea of the prototyping card and this kind of rapid prototyping. So I'm excited to see what everyone has.
This is always really good practice for me because I don't get out of my own head very easily. And I always need structures and direction in order to come up with something. So these are always good exercises for me.
And we have 2 new people in the room. If you'd like to explain what we're working on, that'd be awesome. You are muted.
Welcome. We are putting in the chat where we're from and what brought you to today's STEAM Seekers. What are you interested in taking away with you? And we are working on building a prototype of our dream house. And we're using just what we have in the environment around us. So if you're at your office, what do you have in your desk drawer or on the shelf behind you? Seiji's up in upstate New York. He's scrounging around in the garden and underneath the sink to see what's out there. Just simple open-ended materials. And we'll add on a couple of minutes here. We'll go to about 20 after. It's just prototyping is quick, out of the box, simple, doesn't have to be perfect. It's really just a tangible representation of an idea that you have in your head. So how can you use simple materials that you have lying around? I have a glue stick and some tape and some paper, pieces of cardboard box because we got a delivery. You know, what can you use to create a representation of what your idea of your dream house might be?
We'll get into this even more after we finish up this next couple minutes here, but even this prompt is a little less open-ended than we often like to have them. You know, building a dream house, we're still, even though we're not giving any specifics, it's still a kind of a slightly more specific instruction to build a house. A lot of the time, as you'll see, as we go further into the discussion, we would want it even more open-ended than that. So we'll talk about that as well.
we'll take another minute and then we'll see what you've created so far. All right. If you feel like sharing what you've created, we'd love it if you could turn your camera on and share. If you don't mind, I'll break the ice and go first. So very traditional house, right? It has 4 walls, but a glass roof, and it's got a greenhouse kind of on this end, because those who know me know I'm fanatical about gardening. And so I'd like to be able to garden all year round. And I have big sliders and windows on all 4 sides. So I have lots of light, and I live here in New England. So I can't garden in all 4 seasons, but I could if I had almost a glass house, attached to the other end of my house. So that's what I thought about. I drew in the shrubs and flowers. So there you go. We'll see what happens. Would anyone else like to share?
I can
Oh.
share. I
Oh.
also I just moved offices, so I don't even have scissors or anything in here. But I used, and y'all are gonna be like, ooh, no, this was already built, this little structure. It also has glass walls, and I put a plant pot in it to symbolize my rooftop garden. And then I drew some little bookshelves with a cat on there and some, oh, it's falling apart, some plants.
Love it, Crystal. Very imaginative, and repurposing things, because that's what prototyping is all about too, is repurposing and reusing. Awesome.
So I'll go next. I went with like I said, the very limited things I had either on my person or that I found in the house. As you can see, very traditional style, made out of a tissue box here, which is still going to have to be reused as a tissue box later. So couldn't do permanent damage. No tape. All I had was 1 rubber band. So I used that to take a greeting card actually and create my roof shape. And then I happened to find this one little dowel here. I broke into a couple pieces. So this represents my very tall chimney or maybe flagpole. And this is the framing, which represents my 2nd floor sun deck. As you can see, I can come out and enjoy the views of the water that everyone who lives in Rhode Island has, no matter where you live, of course. And then just a little bit of and then just a little bit of Sharpie to draw on my doors, windows, entrances, and then on this side, a climbing wall. That's actually something I'm trying to install in my current house, so I can practice some rock climbing as exercise. But as you can see, very, very simple.
Awesome. I'm coming over for the climbing wall. That'd be good for me. Would anyone else like to share their creation?
I can share.
Hey, Mary.
So I'm going to preface this by saying I did not get the email this morning, and I'm in a conference room. So all I have is what I brought in with me. So it's a little house. I made it out of paper. It's got like a farmhouse style roof, which I really like that style roof, so that's what I went with. And because it's cold and snowy, all I have is one door to get in.
Very imaginative, and all with a ream of paper.
Yes, and I will say, I think that where it is probably more important to me than like what my house looks like. But that's all right. It's just a simple cabin.
Excellent. Excellent. Anyone else?
I'll go.
Jennifer.
So I just kind of grabbed some pipe cleaners and beads and paper and tape. So this is my little cottage, and there's a little door, and I have little flowers that I made because I want lots of flowers. And I imagine like this crazy lady cottage in the woods that's completely like secluded, and it's like made out of eccentric little beads and stuff, because that would fit what my house would look like.
Sounds like Hansel and Gretel, the witches cabin in the woods.
Right.
This is
Luckily,
friendly.
luckily I don't cook, so we should be safe.
Anybody else?
Sure, I'd like to go. I'm Jackie.
Hey, Jackie.
I love all the repurposing and the shiny beads on everybody's projects. I just grabbed some craft supplies from my makerspace, and what came to mind for me was a tree house. So I made a little pipe cleaner tree, and my husband says that hexagons are bestagons. So I made a hexagon house with just a simple door. Yeah.
Love it. Treehouse. That's a great idea.
So Jackie, you said you grabbed some materials from your makerspace. So you guys have some of these materials. Do you have a prototyping cart before we dive in? I mean, we'll dive into the bigger presentation in a minute, but do you guys already have a prototyping cart, and do you do prompts like this?
I love that you asked that, because what we have is a cart, 2 carts labeled craft cart, but this workshop is already getting me thinking about reframing the presentation of those materials as a prototyping cart to inspire this process. So loving it already.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. Great. Well, I guess we should just, is there anyone else who'd like to share their creation before we dive in? Okay. Seiji, do you want me to get set up so we can show the cart from right away? Or do you think we should talk a little bit about, I know we had some folks who were looking specifically about ideas for all ages. And one of the things we were going to talk about is how we use prototyping.
Yeah.
And I think that is exactly the kind of thing that they're looking for.
Yeah.
So-
Why don't we dive into the document first, and then when we get lower in the document, it goes into like materials and things. Then we can show the card and the budget as well.
Okay. Kara, do you mind sharing out that document that I gave to you, the link? So we've created a document, I should say, not we, Seiji, created a document that'll give you an overview of everything that we talk about today. And it also has a link to the cart that you're going to see and all of the supplies we talk about, and an example of a budget if you were looking at, trying to replicate this kind of thing, except for the clunky old wooden library cart. You could bring your own. So let me just make sure that we got, okay, so the document you should be able to open that. And that'll cover, a lot of what we're talking about today, and you're welcome to obviously have that when you go forward. So prototyping, as I mentioned, when we talked about the prompt we gave you, is really just a tangible way of making an idea begin to take shape. And it's something that you do quickly. It doesn't usually last for more than 30 minutes. You use simple open-ended materials, could be repurposed materials, craft supplies, whatever you have around. And it's all about getting out of your own head and thinking outside the box and using it as a jumping off point for where you want to get to in the end. You have an idea in your head, and then what is that going to look like? How can I begin to make that into something? And rather than using real things, we use cardboard and paper and things that can be manipulated, things that can be changed around as we go through the various iterations of what we're making.
Yeah, we often find that with a lot of the students who it's their first time coming into the makerspace, there's a couple barriers. One of them is just not having confidence, not knowing what they should be doing. And a lot of students are very uncomfortable with not having very clear instructions and assignments. So, the most often way that we use it, like Ann said, is just as a kind of a jumping off point, an icebreaker to get students out of their shell, get them past the idea that things need to be perfect and that you can't make something unless you have a roadmap to exactly how it's supposed to be, and really get them comfortable with imperfection. And later down the line, as they try even more complex things, get comfortable with failure. Not that there's a way you can fail at a quick prompt like this. In fact, the only way you can really fail is to not try. And that's really what, we're trying to get them to understand as well.
And I think that's kind of key to the whole idea of the makerspace, is that it's a low risk place where you can come and try things and fail, or it doesn't work the way you think it's going to. But that's okay. That's what you're here. That's what you're here for, is to try out your ideas in a variety of different ways till you get it to work the way you want to. And I think many students don't have, everything is such high stakes for them, especially in school, that coming to a space like this, that takes some getting used to. They don't have, as Seiji said, they don't have the structure. And it is okay to take a risk and try something new and know that it's all right. And that you've got folks there who can, offer support and that you can ask questions about it.
So as we mentioned earlier a little bit, this prompt that we did was, even slightly more specific than we usually try to go with. We usually try to have our prompts, especially when used in this, you'll see this term come up a little bit lower down to rapid prototyping, icebreaker technique. We want them to be as open-ended as possible. So we have an example right here. Even instead of saying build a car, we would rather say build something that can move, or that instead of saying build a plane, build something that can fly. Or it could even be build something that makes you happy. The more open-ended it can be, the easier it is sometimes for people to get over that barrier, because even saying build a car, that brings together all of these images of what a car should actually look like. And a lot of time, unless kids feel like they have the instructions and the parts to be able to make what they think a car should actually look like, that's still a barrier. But if you just say build something that's fun, build something that's beautiful, or build something that can move, that takes away a lot of those preconceived notions for them of what the outcome should be, and gives them a little bit more freedom to have that confidence to try. And that brings us into the idea of rapid prototyping. So prototyping obviously is something that in the STEAM world and the maker world we do all the time. And as the age of our students gets higher, and the amount of time that they've been doing maker things, and the more complex their projects get, prototyping can be something that takes months, or even most of a year if it's a year-long class. Doing iterative prototyping, doing it over and over again. But we find that at this very entry-level stage of making, rapid prototyping is really the way to go for all the reasons we discussed above. And that is literally just a specific type of prototyping, like we've said, that we try to use the first icebreaker, and it's very short in time. This 5 to 8 minutes that we did for this first icebreaker activity, that's not uncommon. Like Ann said, we usually don't like to go above 30 minutes. And definitely, 15 to 20 minutes is usually enough time to get the students just working with the materials and get them comfortable with putting something together. And that doesn't mean that once you've done that first iteration, you have to stop and put the prototyping card away. The prototyping card can be used in tons of different ways. And just like, I can't remember if it was Jackie or the other person who said they have a cart with crafts on it, your prototyping cart can still be your craft cart. But in certain contexts, if you're using it for an activity like this, it's also your prototyping card. So you can do your first rapid prototyping, and then you can say, well, now that you've done this version, let's do a more in-depth version. What parts do you like about this? And that can really be a jumping off point for a longer term activity, or the idea of iterative prototyping where they're improving upon it and improving upon it.
We also use this kind of activity a lot with, so we have Open Studio, for example, where, and it might be with we partner often with community organizations, and they come in to do, to visit the makerspace. And this is one of the activities that we'll have out, or at least the materials that we'll have out. And sometimes we give them a prompt and sometimes we don't. But we find that, for example, we had one last weekend where we had families coming in. So we had everybody from 4 to 45 in the room, and we had cardboard and cardboard cutters and duct tape and straws and dowels and things out. And we just, it's a way of sort of, again, getting people used to the idea of unstructured kind of making, and a way of introducing that concept to them in the space without having, and that it doesn't necessarily have to involve technology or a tool. It can just be some materials. The other thing that that's worked really well for us is that when we have school visits, so we had a series of school visits. Everybody from the elementary school up the street came last spring, K to 5, at different times. And for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders who don't want to sit and listen to a story so much, we had them come down to the makerspace, and we gave them a prompt. We gave them this very prompt, build your dream house. And we gave them these kinds of materials, and they spent a good half hour, 45 minutes during their visits doing this. And we found it to be, and I think Seiji would agree, found it to be really effective. And it piqued a lot of interest in the students to come back. They asked a lot of questions, and it really got them talking to each other. And the teachers were there to walk around too. And it gave them it was a different kind of learning experience for them, which was really nice.
Yeah. And, we've been mentioning over and over again how this is an icebreaker. And Anne was just saying how it's especially a great icebreaker for younger age students into STEM and into making, because it doesn't require a lot of complex lessons or skills, and especially technology. And that's also why it's such a great icebreaker into maker spaces and STEAM activities for libraries as well. And that's one of the main reasons we wanted to do this as one of our first lessons, because when we started doing maker programming in the libraries about 5 or 6 years ago across Providence, we started with just prototyping cards. We started with just these basic materials. We didn't start out with hundreds and thousands of dollars of 3D printers and laser cutters and vinyl cutters and all these things. We started with just basic activities like this, basic materials like this, a lot of these that you can get for free through donations, or that you already have at your school that came in your regular budget for the year, especially if you already have a children's space. And you'll see when we get to a basic budget that even if you buy all of these things from scratch, you don't have any of this, and you actually pay for it all, it's still not breaking the bank. But that it is a really affordable way that you can get your makerspace up and running. And even if you don't have the money to buy it, you can get these through donations a lot.
Yeah. So should I, since it's about 20 minutes of 3, shall I walk over to the cart and start talking about the cart? Does anybody have any questions so far or any comments? This is probably a good place to catch up with all of you.
Well, so real quick, and while you're heading over there, we'll just go over the last little part of this page before we get to the part in the actual budget, which kind of breaks down all the items on it. But you can see the list here of just very basic things that we in a prototyping cart. Construction paper, glues, tape, especially hot glue guns. Those are really great, especially for rapid prototyping. You don't want to sit there and wait for glue to dry, traditional glue. Cotton balls, pipe cleaners, dowels, cardboard. Doesn't have to be fancy cardboard you buy, just cut up boxes every time you get a shipment of something. Rubber bands, popsicle sticks, string of any kind, hemp, foam core, foam board, cardboard tubes, empty paper towel rolls, empty toilet paper rolls, for example, toothpicks, fabric scraps, empty cans and plastic bottles, aluminum foil, and then just in general, any scraps of material that you have left over. One of our bins actually is just like pieces of broken things, scraps from our laser cutter of wood or plastic that we've cut. When we've gotten other sprues, you know how certain toys will come on sprues, they've been injection molded, you have to kind of cut them off of it. We save those pieces of sprues and those become materials that people can use to build with. So like we were saying, it really is just kind of the lowest level, the lowest barrier of entry for getting started, and does not cost a lot of money. And now if you are looking at this sheet that they dropped a link for in the chat, you'll see that there is a link second from the bottom right next to cost. It says click here for estimated budget. And this document kind of goes hand in hand with what Anne is about to be pointing out on the physical cart. So if you'd like to open that up, you can. Otherwise, you can just watch Anne for now as she goes over the cart, and I'll also drop the link for that document into the chat as well, even though it's our title document. Go ahead, Anne. Sorry.
Great, so the cart in this case is actually a cart. It's just a regular library cart, which probably all of us have one or two around that we don't use as often, but it doesn't have to be a cart. It could be a bin that you keep, or it could be a shelf somewhere. But we just used a library cart. It's easy to move around and it doesn't take up too much space. We have a dedicated maker space, as we're very lucky that way. So we actually, when we aren't using it like this, we have a cabinet where we can store all of the supplies. And storage is a big thing. Everybody wonders, I'm sure, you know, how do we store everything? I like to think it's a little bit like Marie Kondo. Everything needs to have a home because it's easier to keep organized and it's much easier to interact with the materials if they have a place to live, easier to clean up after, easier to get the participants, get the students to help you. So we have simple plastic bins like this, and they actually stack one on top of each other. But we also have, depending on what you're storing, just a plastic, it's a soup container, takeout soup container for pencils and markers. This is just another thing, keep the hot glue guns in and things. So whatever you have around, you could use. I went into my recycle bin at home and, you know, you get the plastic clamshells. I mean, this would be perfectly good to keep things in so that it's got a cover. You could keep smaller items in this. Maybe you've got oatmeal containers. You could put your dowels or your straws or your pipe cleaners in something like that. So, you know, you can think again, outside the box, what's in your recycle bin at home that you could use to store things in. So you don't have to go out and buy anything fancy. It's all about not being fancy.
And that's actually one thing we did not include on the budget. If you have that document open, we did not include the cost of the cart or the storage bins because you don't have to spend any money on them, just like Ann said.
Right.
So yeah.
So,
And I am actually, sorry, and I am actually just noticing right now that the shifter, the picture shifted. We had put I had put little numbered bubbles over each of the items. And it looks like the picture shifted slightly to the left, but I'm sure you can still kind of follow along and figure out what the bubbles are supposed to be pointing at.
I'll bounce along and I thought we thought we'd just review what's on the cart,
Yeah,
and show, so. Need things we need it, you do need different kinds of adhesives. So either glue in a bottle, glue sticks, we also have a bin full of different kinds of tape. So masking tape and painter's tape is good because you can remove it if you're trying different things. We have packing tape and the ever-present, ever-popular duct tape. You can't have cardboard if you don't have duct tape, but there's washi tape in here, you know, anything that will help stick things together, bring them together, hold them together. So always need lots of tape. And glue. Also you need things that can cut things. So we have a good supply of child size scissors, which do a pretty good job with cardboard. We have regular scissors. If you have a makerspace that also does sewing and fabric work, we highly recommend that you keep fabric scissors separate from the scissors that you're using for everything else, because these will be the ones you're using for everything else will become dull much more quickly, and you want your fabric scissors to stay nice and sharp. So we also have these cardboard cutters. And you're thinking, oh no, we don't want to give those to the kids. It just has a small serrated edge, and I'm running my finger on it. And I mean, you really have to press down on it in order to hurt yourself. So with students of different ages, this is a good thing to use with them, and they have to, you just press down and saw in order to get it through. So.
yeah, they are no sharper than a butter knife.
Yeah, a
You'll see
little
them on the
sharper than
budget.
yeah,
They're-
but not like a box cutter. And then things like, you know, what's this? Hole punch, things like that. So we always have paper, can use it for all different kinds of things, but not the least of which would be giving, as part of the design process, having students and participants draw out, sketch out what they're thinking about, because that's a really good way to get them thinking about through the whole design process. We always have pencils, regular pencils, colored pencils, markers of different kinds. Because they'll want to add to their structure, they'll want to draw things out. Then we have the other adhesive we have is you need some hot glue guns. And if you watched our first video, we used hot glue guns on that project, and always have lots of extra glue sticks. The important thing with the glue guns is that if the kids are little, you're really young, they probably have supervision, but you always want to review with the tool that the glue and the tip are very hot and they can burn themselves, so they never touch that part. Then it's a question of lots of different kinds of materials. So this bin has dowels of different sizes, but it also has our favorites, craft sticks. We have the big jumbo ones and also the small ones. These small, they all come in, I think it's 1,000 to a box, which sounds like a lot until you get a big class and you're enjoying building something that uses a lot of craft sticks. But these are great. Also I have these. We have straws. You can use paper and or plastic. These happen to be the larger ones, like you might get with bubble tea or something like that, so that you can actually put things through the center of it. I've seen students use them for when they're making, was it a catapult or a trebuchet? Where
Yeah.
there had to be a lever that moved. So they put the axle through the straw in order to allow it to move.
Yeah, it works as a great hinge. Yeah, if you were in the catapult or trebuchet, one we did last time.
So this is a bin of things that we're reusing. So we have a laser cutter. And so many of the things in this bin happen to be the scraps from projects that have been done on the laser cutter. And we tested some toys for a local toy company, and these were some of the plastic pieces that were left when the kids had, you know, assembled the toys. So, oh, and we have, you know, all kinds of little cardboard things, just miscellaneous things. I think one of the things we mentioned in our sheet is that check your, sometimes your community might have a recycling of like a donation center where corporations can or companies can donate materials. So some of the materials we get, and we get from a local recycling for education center, and I believe we gave you a link to kind of give you an idea. But companies, if they have, we have a lot of textile companies here in Rhode Island, or did. So we end up getting these really big cardboard tubes that are very solid, and we get those at the recycle center. But you can also have, obviously, paper towel tubes. And these kinds of places, usually you can buy by the pound. So we take big bags and we're paying 40 cents a pound for all of the different things that we pick up. They have everything from ribbon, paper, felt, beads.
Leather, even expensive materials like leather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just depends on what the companies have donated. For a while, they had lots of office supplies too, binders and pads and things, so you never know. So hopefully, maybe your community or community nearby has a center like that, because it's a terrific way to get inexpensive but useful materials for your space.
And even with how cheap something like a recycle center is, there's even free options. You know, you don't have to have a laser cutter to get wooden scraps or scraps of material like that. If there's a carpentry place up the street, any kind of place that's producing any kind of waste material, I bet you that they would be willing to give you their scraps for free, and you can do a lot of really cool stuff with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so this bin just has different kinds of foam. Save your packaging. Amazon boxes are your best friend. Cut them up with those cute little cardboard cutters, and we always have a supply of cardboard in the closet of different sizes. But this is packing foam that came with things that we cut up into different different sizes. If you've got foam core, I can remember one time we got a new automatic book drop, and when it came, it was packed with the cylinders. They look sort of like swimming tubes. What are they called? Pool noodles. Pool noodles. And we cut them in half and use them to make marble runs. Pool noodles are great. You buy those at the dollar store. You can do lots of things with pool noodles. Pipe cleaners. I think it was Jackie, was it, who made the treehouse with pipe cleaners? They're great to have, flexible and strong. This bin is full of fabric scraps. A lot of our fabric, I think, Seiji, right, has come from donations. So when people, I have friends who are quilters and sewers, and all I say to them is, we anytime you want to get rid of your fabric, and I have 3 garbage bags in the back of my car because they always have extra fabric. We've had people who are downsizing their houses, patrons who come in and say, I'm downsizing and I've been a quilter my whole life and I need to get rid of my fabric. I'd like to give it away. And we have a whole rack full of things. So donations are a great way for people to support the library in ways that are meaningful for them. And that their things are going to be used.
And you can even put out wish lists. I think that's one thing that we also mentioned on the first document, that, you know, if you have a Friends of the Library newsletter and you're trying to get some materials like this, put out a wish list of like the items on our sample prototyping cart budget, I bet you that you'll be able to get most of them donated.
We've even done that here with staff. We put out a wish list, and got things right away from even people who are on staff who were looking to rehome things or add a jar of buttons that they never used, you know, things like that. So, we have a big bin of rubber bands. As you saw with Seiji's, just one rubber band can hold a roof on. So, always have rubber bands around, different sizes, different thicknesses. And then this bin has different kinds of string, hemp, leather, all different kinds of things that you can thread with, tie with, things like that. Let's see. Cardboard, there's pieces of cardboard down there. Anything else you want to add, Seiji, that I didn't?
I think you covered most of the materials, especially
Yeah.
the ones that are on the sample budget, but the last thing I really want to say before I think we probably have to go into questions is that, you know, once again, this cart is your craft. This is your craft cart. This can be your prototyping cart used in the way we're describing today. But also, even though we have a makerspace with all this expensive tech and all these other things, these materials still get used all the time in conjunction with them. And even though some of the things we described today seem like they might not be good for older students, we've had some really great STEM and engineering challenges that use basically just the stuff on this card. All the time we'll do bridge building challenges, tower building challenges, who can build a boat that will hold the most weight before it sinks. We do this with high school students, and with just toothpicks, dowels, and hot glue guns, I've seen them build bridges that can hold 100 pounds of textbooks, or I've even seen a student stand on one before. So there really is no age limit almost to these type of materials and how they can be used, which is why we think it's such a great first step for getting your makerspace started with such a low barrier of entry.
Yeah, yeah. Does anyone have any questions for us or comments? Yes, Cynthia, the first session lives on the Library Makers YouTube channel. And one of us will figure out how to get you the link for that. But yes, we did a catapult. Oh, you can get to it? Okay, great. Yes, Cynthia, that's where it is. Yep, it's on the YouTube channel. And this one will be too. Kara's recorded it. Seiji, what do we typically do with the prototypes left behind?
So we find that most of our students will take them, but some of them that are left behind, if they're cool enough and big enough, we'll put them out for display for a little while. We usually have a little section in the makerspace. You know, just in general, with whatever tool we're using, we always like to have inspirational projects around, because the biggest question you get when people come in is, what do I do with these things? So having examples around goes a long way. And if neither of those two options work, then you can recycle the materials right back into the prototyping cart. You know, the tape and even the hot glue gun, it's so easy to disassemble. And even if like the dowel breaks in half or a popsicle stick breaks in half, to a reasonable extent, that can go into your scrap bin instead of going right back into the brand new dowel or popsicle stick bin. Same thing with cardboard scraps. So we recycle a lot of our prototyping materials over and over again.
Well, we have a couple people who are getting new maker spaces. So I think we, as you say, this is a good way to think about starting out. And we had a couple of people who asked about multiple ages. So again, I hope that we were able to answer that question and make you feel a little bit more comfortable with the whole prototyping process.
Yeah. And like we said, there's the open-ended rapid prototyping, but also there are so many examples of engineering challenges, quote unquote, that you can just Google online, and 90% of them use the same materials you have here. So you can tailor, with just these same materials and varying levels of difficulty and specificity for the activities, you can tailor these same materials to all sorts of different activities in age groups. So if you really are just at your first stages, there's no money or no one believes in what you're trying to do by creating a makerspace in your library, this is a great way to get your foot in the door and really show results.
Well, we'd really like to thank you for being with us this afternoon, and we always have a lot of fun meeting everybody and sharing ideas back and forth, and continuing to grow this community of makers. Hope that you'll share what you learned today and what you know about library makers. We're always looking to build the community. And I'm sure that Seiji and I will be doing this again. We seem to have a pretty good team going and lots of ideas. But if you have any ideas or want to know more about things, reach out to library makers or reach out to us directly, and we're happy to see if we can make that happen. Good luck with your new maker spaces and have a wonderful weekend. And thank you, Kara, for being our producer today. And the recording of this session will go up on the Library Makers YouTube page as soon as it's come to us from Zoom. So thank you very much.
Excellent job. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Kara.